Hi, my name is Jeroen Hopp. I'm author of the Clapham Property Blog. Today is day 2 of my mini-series on adding value to your investments. So whether you're a property investor or developer or landlord or however you like to call yourself, hopefully you'll find good value in my tips. I've been an estate agent for nearly 15 years before I started investing full-time February last year, actually. So you can say that I've seen a fair few flats and houses around South and West London. So different markets there, but nonetheless, a lot of things that you can take away and use in your investments, whether you're in South, North London or elsewhere in the country. So today is day 2 of the mini-series. Today we're going to talk about refurbs on the cheap. Now cheap is often an ugly word, isn't it? If you're referred to as cheap, you're the guy or girl that doesn't cough up when it's your round and so forth. So cheap is something that we tend to want to avoid. But why is it that a lot of landlords and investors try and do things on the cheap? Well, obviously, you've got to think about your profit. You're not doing it just for the love. We talked about that yesterday a little bit, and I'm guilty of spending too much. And I always think when I go in and view properties, like, wow, this looks a little bit cheap. They should have spent a little bit more money. But in fact, cheap isn't always a bad thing. It's about finding that value for money. Now, the first thing that tenants will look at, as we said yesterday, is the outside, so the curb appeal. So you've got to spend a bit of money there. And when I say spend money, people often think that price equals quality, but that's not always true, is it? You've got to have good taste, because a lot of very expensive things aren't necessarily very nice. So you've got to look at stuff that will either let or sell. You've got to look at your target audience. One key example is the internal decor. So when I go into a property and there's magnolia walls everywhere and it's all bland, it's a real turn off. I think, giving value from landlords and investors to their customers, their would-be buyers or their tenants is key. So if you're not offering value, you're not putting up a picture on the wall, or you're not spending a little bit of time to give attention to the little things like the contact points. Contact points in a property are things like the door handle. We're talking door handles on all the internal doors, not just the front door. You're talking light switches, sockets, all those sorts of things. So things that immediately jump out. Now, the other big thing that I noticed is that a lot of the times people will scrimp and save so much, they'll go for like the tiniest bit of skirting board as well. So there's different types of skirting boards. The most common ones that I see, because I buy a lot of ex-council property, is the bullnose one. Very plain. It's about this tall. I tend to like the bigger Victorian ones. Now you can get them up to like 28 mil or something. I generally go for about 18 mil high. Sorry, not 18 mil, 18 centimeters, and that's a good jump up from the floor. And it just makes it stand out a little bit more attention to detail. So skirting boards, architraves, we mentioned light sockets, switches, all those sorts of things. So leading on from that, I said earlier about dressing up the property a little bit. Now, when a property is ready to go to market, whether you're letting it, furnished or unfurnished, or whether you're selling it, it always pays to dress the property and make it look like some care has gone into it. Now, it doesn't matter if you go into Argos and buy cheap curtains, or whether you go into John Lewis or have custom-made things made. That doesn't matter. Just a little bit more attention to detail, because as I said, spending more money doesn't always make it better. So if you spend £100 on a particular blind at John Lewis, which is custom made or whatever, it'll look just as good as an Argos blind. If blinds is your thing, it doesn't matter how much you spend on the blind. Yeah, okay, there's subtle nuances in color, but it's the overall feel. So you're trying to create a feeling of quality. So the moment that tenants or would-be buyers step in, it's got to look good, hasn't it? Don't go cheap, right? Don't scrimp, spend time. Time and effort is almost as important as the money that you spend. So I mentioned earlier door furniture, very modern touches at the moment. We're talking chrome, or satin brush chrome, stainless steel. Stay away from brass. Brass is not good. I know that was very popular once upon a time. Not that anyone actually liked it, to be honest. I've never actually gone into a property and seen cheap laminate wooden flooring with scotia everywhere and brass handles and thought, wow, this is amazing. It gives it that plain refurbed on the cheap look. So don't go cheap on things like kitchens and bathrooms either. I see a lot of bathrooms where, you know, they've tiled the bare minimum, just tiled the just over the bath, for example, nowhere else. Hey, guess what? If you're letting it and they're not ventilating enough, you're going to get mold problems on the bit that's not tiled. So guess how that's going to look in a few years' time? It's not going to look great, is it? So go the whole hog and do yourself a favor and spend that money now and the time and the effort, get the whole thing tiled, and there will be more longevity in the property. Yeah, you won't need to repaint the bathroom. You won't need to do the anti-mold stuff. You won't have to have that conversations about ventilating with the tenants, because invariably you will no matter what you do, but you can postpone that by tiling straight up to the ceiling. Kitchens. Now this is a key example. I remember many occasions where I've walked in and the landlord goes, "It's a brand new kitchen." I'm like, well, yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you're right, it is a brand new kitchen, but it looks really rubbish. They blatantly went to B&Q, they got the cheapest kitchen they could possibly find, no soft close anywhere, it's all bang, 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 and it just looks and feels really cheap. I mean, I've even seen a house worth £700,000 that they were letting for nearly £3,000 a month, and literally, I wanted to rip out the kitchen right there and then. It just did not go with the entire property. It was just cheap, and it looked cheap. Now, so we talked about cheap being bad, and I mentioned as well that you don't have to necessarily spend a fortune, because price doesn't always equal quality. So it's value that you're after. So how do you get value? Well, a lot of people, they employ the builders on a labouring contract and they supply the materials, but obviously material costs money. So how can you save money on materials? Well, if you're a landlord and you do this not so frequently, you may not have had the thought to open up a trade account with suppliers such as Bath Store, bathrooms.com, or other tile shops, wherever you prefer to shop. But a lot of people, they think, all right, well, I want to spend a bit more money. I'll spend £40 a metre on tiles. Now, I spend between £10 and £12 a metre on tiles, and people compliment me all the time saying that they look absolutely amazing. Where'd you get them from? All this and that. And they're available. They're available online. I just go for what looks amazing at a really knockdown price. So I generally sort my shopping on price, and I keep going up until I find something that is exactly that look that I want. And generally, it's on the price spectrum. So if this is the price spectrum from cheap to expensive, it's round about here. Because the cheapest of the cheapest of the cheapest is nasty. You go a little bit higher in price, you get something amazing already. And actually, the return for the money spent as you go up, you're not necessarily getting something that much better. So look for value. Look for value in the materials that you supply, and look for value in your builder as well. When you're negotiating the contract with your builder, there's a lot that he can supply on the cheap, and you can say to him, look, I'm going to do 3 flats this year. I want to work with you continuously. Let's work something out on the materials. I'm happy to pay you for your labor and a small markup on the materials. You can have him source it. If you are time rich, there are products out there such as the LMPG membership discount, to which if you're interested, you can email me and I can get you a discount code. And they've negotiated contract prices on things like kitchens, bathrooms, all that sort of thing. So saving you shopping around, you just go to the website, click, order, done. So if you want a discounted contract, then let me know. Email me and I'll send you an intro, and you'll get a discount off your first year's membership. So the membership is a few £100 depending on how many properties you have. But if I tell you that the kitchens in my property cost less than £3,000, you're staggered, because you've seen the quality of my properties. But it just goes to show cheap isn't bad. You got to find the value. So that's all for today. Hopefully you found that useful. So don't go cheap, go good value for money, and go for the look. So join me tomorrow for another episode of this mini-series. So that'll be day three. Topic you'll have to tune in to find out. So hopefully see you next time. If you want to know more, like me on Facebook, Clapham Property Blog, follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn if that's your preferred platform. See you next time.